I don't see any objectivity in it at all.
So there is no objective truth.
No.
The fact that you and I are having a conversation is not an objective truth. It's subjective.
I cannot say 100% there was a Big Bang, because it's a contested theory.
Every theory is contested.
Yeah, exactly.
The theory of gravitation, because it's contested, therefore it is not valid. In science, a theory is based off of a lot of evidence. I think you should know that better than I. You're the science professor, or let me defend science. We're the Existence Project, and we try to have respectful, loving conversations.
Let me show you something here.
Do you mind? We're non.
No. Look, this. You see that?
Uh-huh.
That's a living sentient being.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't you think it's amazing though?
I see what you're doing.
With it, it's delicate. Yeah. Do you like it?
The issue.
Do you want it? Do you want it? Because you can have one. I've got another one here.
The issue with what you're saying.
Fight, so you've got to be careful. So go on. Yeah. Let me just.
The issue with this equivocation that you made, which a lot of atheists make, is nobody is saying that invisible creature that you claim exists has started all of this. We know that there is a cause of all causes, and that is what we're out here discussing.
I think it did. I think this one did start it all. I really do think it was right there. I don't believe in the Big Bang. I think this guy, you've got to be careful. I think he started it.
Yeah. I believe.
Prove me wrong if you like, but you can't prove something. You can't prove the sort of the negative.
I respect that.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you the three things that are wrong with this statement that you're making. Number one. When we talk about, for example, the Big Bang, I believe that the Big Bang is a scientific reality for which there is a substantial amount of evidence.
My guy doesn't agree with you. He's getting a bit. I can feel him jumping around in it. He's getting a bit irate. Because he really doesn't believe in the Big Bang. Okay. Yeah.
So we have to work with the evidence that we have in front of us.
Okay. Listen, the evidence is right here in my pocket. And I just took him out and. So how would you define evidence? Since you've started this game, I'll play. Okay.
How would you define evidence?
Well, this is the evidence. It's right here in my pocket, and I took it out and I showed it to you, and
on camera we can see that there's nothing there, and everyone with eyes will agree that there's nothing there.
No, I can see it.
Okay.
I can see because I believe it's there. I believe it, and therefore I can see it.
Exactly.
It's about belief. Sorry? And I've got faith in my guys.
I see.
And it's about belief and faith, and they're there in my pocket, and I believe in them.
So when it comes to faith, we're out here talking about the concept of God in Islam. Islam does not invite anyone to blindly believe in anything for which there is no evidence. So I'm afraid your entire example falls apart.
Well,
because
only by your rules, though, but not by my rules.
No. By the rules of rationality and science, you have to remember the hubris with which sometimes people talk down in Islam. It was Islam that pioneered the original scientific golden age, upon whose shoulders the entire European Renaissance stood.
You're talking about God,
so it's important
to. An Islamic concept. Sorry? You're talking about God is not an Islamic concept. Because I'm a Roman Catholic and I've got God too.
Yes.
And lots of people have got God, and I've got my guy here, and that's I could call him
so
God.
You're saying the Roman Catholic concept of God is that you have God in your pocket that hangs from your finger?
That's not Roman Catholic. No, I left that behind. I just got faith in my guys, and they're good, and they're pretty cool.
Okay.
And they were right there at the beginning, and they did start it all. And you can't prove me wrong.
Oh, but I can.
You can't.
I'll tell you why.
He's in my pocket.
I'll tell you why.
He's jumping around in my pocket. I can feel him.
I'll tell you why. Firstly, when we say that something created this universe, this world, there should be some evidence that substantiates that claim.
I don't think there has to be evidence, really. We could just say it, can't we? I mean, it doesn't have to be an evidence.
You would wager on your entire world philosophy based off of something that has no evidence. I wouldn't. I don't think any rational person would.
Well,
and that's not what we're out here saying.
I've got evidence. But
evidence has to be testifiable, verifiable by other individuals who are also rational and sane.
I don't think that's how it works, because I think
I'm afraid the entire scientific world disagrees with you.
Yeah, I'm a scientist, so
and you're saying this.
I teach science here.
Oh, nice! That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So the thing is that. What I say, and I really believe it, and I've got faith in it, for me that's good enough. And what you say, and you really believe in it, and you've got faith in it, that's good enough. And so that's all it really needs,
The issue with that is that Another person might say, I believe that my God tells me to hurt other people, and that's where the problem arises. And that's where we have to have the hard discussions, because I'm sorry, it's not good enough. If today somebody came up, allow me to respond to your point, please, and you can respond, of course. If a person comes up and says, look, I believe that my God has told me to kill you, you'd have a problem with that. You would not say it's good enough. So it's not as simple as that, and I don't think to have such a hyper-reductionist approach is productive.
But that's only true if God exists, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so if God doesn't exist, I can say my God tells me to do this and do that, but if he doesn't really exist, I've just made it up, haven't I? Okay. Or somebody's told me that and I believe them, and I've got faith in that, and therefore, for me, it's a reality.
So to know whether it is...
My guys here, that's my reality, because I believe in them and I've got faith in them, and my guys here, they're no more or less a God than your guy is.
So we talk about Roman Catholic, Catholicism. Let's go back to the original prophets of God and what they taught. They taught in an objective truth, not your reality versus my reality, in an actual objective truth that can be verified.
It's their truth. That's the problem. It's their truth.
Oh no,
it's not
but
everybody's truth.
My dear friend and respected professor, it's not just their proof. People testified to that proof and that truth, and they themselves verified. That's why they became their followers. That's why people like Moses and Jesus and Muhammad hold sway over the vast majority of people.
To difference of opinion here. Because I don't think that's...
It's not a matter of opinion that there's objective truth.
But I don't think it's subjective.
Sorry?
I don't see any objectivity in it at all.
So there is no objective truth. No. The fact that you and I are having a conversation is not an objective truth. It's subjective.
That's just something that's happening. But
that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying, that the fact that this universe is happening is an objective truth, and what caused it to happen is an even greater objective truth.
Well, we don't know what caused it to happen, do we? Nobody knows what caused it to happen, or whether it...
That's why we're...
I mean, does any of this...
The initial cause has to exist, of course.
But then what about a quantum
If
world?
this universe is C, and the Big Bang was B, and it's a series of contingent events, and that is demonstrable by all of our scientific inquiry, then we know that A has to exist. You have to show me a single particle in the universe that causes itself or is uncaused.
But
the entire universe is against.
Exist at the same time, and still be A and B can both exist at the same time and be different.
That's a valid point, except it doesn't apply here because we know that the Big Bang started 13.8 billion years ago.
Does your God exist in a quantum world?
Define quantum world. That's a tricky one.
Well, this is the whole point, isn't it? Is that we don't even know what a world is, we don't even know what the universe is, and yet some people say that their God created a universe, and we don't. Our knowledge and understanding doesn't allow us to know what a universe is.
It's funny,
we can't know what a God is.
Just responding to this point one by one, it's funny that I'll speak to various atheists. It's funny that many times they say we have tremendous knowledge about the physical properties of the universe, and now because of the James Webb and so many other technological advancements, we have an amazing plethora of knowledge about the universe. So to say we don't really know, I think, is a very disingenuous question. We actually know more than we've ever known before, and we should work with the facts in front of us. You're a professor of science. You should know this.
If you go to CERN and talk to all the people who work on the Hadron Collider, they will tell you we just don't know.
We don't know why.
We don't know. We don't know everything about every particle that exists.
No, I understand, but we know a great deal. And to say that we just don't know,
we know a great deal, but we don't know enough. That's the whole point. We don't know enough to know whether there is a God or there isn't a God, whether there is
I agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah, no, I agree with you, but that's not where you find God. God is... No religion has ever said, try to split the atom and you will find God between them. The positive that we are positing, if you will, is that God Almighty, as defined by the Holy Quran and all major Abrahamic faiths, is the one who started all of this. So to say that something didn't start all of this, you would rather say that the universe, without having the ability to choose or decided 13.8 billion years ago to suddenly start existing? So it's a totally irrational equivocation.
I prefer that. It's irrational to you, and it's irrational to all people of faith who believe in a God. It's irrational to them, because for them, their faith is rational. For me, their faith is irrational.
What's irrational about believing that the Big Bang was caused by another cause when every single thing is caused by another cause in our observed
As a
experience.
scientist, I cannot say 100% there was a Big Bang because it's a contested theory.
Every theory is
Yeah,
contested.
exactly. So I'm contesting the existence of God as a theory.
On what grounds?
Theory. Well, on the grounds that
So the theory of
no one's
gravitation,
proved- no
the
one's
theory of
proved to be-
gravitation, because it's contested, therefore it is not valid. In science, a theory is based off of a lot of evidence. I think you should know that better than I.
Yeah, but, I mean, gravitation is a tricky one, isn't it? Because we don't really know what gravitation is anymore. You know, it's not what we thought it was, and it is actually contested now, gravity.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm saying it is contested. Therefore, you would say that on those grounds, it's irrational to believe that gravity exists. You can disagree with the taxonomy, the nomenclature, the semantics around it, but you agree that gravity exists, and our understanding of it evolves.
I don't know if it exists. All I know is that there are observations that I can make, and Newton came up with the theory that there's something that's causing these things to move or to stay where they are, and he called it gravity. But he didn't know very much, Newton. We now know a lot of what Newton, a lot of his calculations are actually incorrect. He did pretty well. He did a pretty good job, but he got a lot of it wrong. But in his day, everybody accepted everything on face value and on evidence, and then we find later on, no, that was wrong. Actually, that's not how it works, and all my knowledge of science will all be disproved one day. But at the moment, it works for me. But I'm not saying.
Let me respond to
it's
this.
rational. None of it's rational.
Let me respond. Let me respond to this point that all of your knowledge of science will be disproved one day. This is not true. And you're the science professor, or let me defend science in my very limited capacity. It is not true. There are things that are verified by more and more evidence with each generation. Please allow me to finish the thought, and I'll come back to you. And those things are dubbed as law. They transcend the concept of theory, and they are dubbed as law. Generally speaking, insofar as our human observation is concerned.
In time, they're all revised.
And that, what I'm saying
All
is,
scientific laws have been revised over time.
that's fine.
And
They have been
all
refined.
future laws will be refined over time. Yeah.
I fully agree with this entire concept. What I'm saying is that this entire concept of God Almighty has been brushed away or waved away with the magic wand of science, whereas Islam has never had any problem with scientific inquiry, because scientifically, whenever we try to investigate into the inner workings of the universe, that is simply the actions of God or whatever is governing this universe, whether it's some creative force or you may call it blind. I'm afraid. Let me just make this point. You can respond, please. So I'm afraid this universe is underpinned by fundamentally creative forces. So to say that that is completely blind is, I think, very unfair. And I think that over the last 50 to 100 years, people who are not familiar with science, they have been victimized by their own ignorance of science. So no matter what scientific theory one posits, it does not take away from the need for a creator or a cause of all causes in this contingent series of events.
Scientists don't say there is no God. Well, some scientists do, but scientists don't say that there is no God.
The new atheists have weaponized this to try to say that there is no. What do you mean you don't know? We're in England. We're at Cambridge. You don't know about Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett and Sam Harris?
I know.
That's certainly what.
Yes. Okay, they have done. You know, Richard Dawkins is an anti-God. Fair enough. But at the end of the day, he has no evidence to prove what he says any more than you have evidence to prove what you say. And
But I say that there is evidence that God exists. That's what we're out here saying.
Also, the thing is, I don't think there's a tension between having faith and science. I was taught all my science at school by Jesuit priests. I was taught physics, chemistry and biology by Jesuit priests, men of God and men of faith. And they had no problem, with the two. But I think the thing is that the more we know, the more we realise we don't know, and we never will know. And that's the thing. That's the point.
So I agree with you.
That's good science.
Yeah, I agree with you. The more we know, the more we realize we don't know. However, what I'm arguing is the more we learn about the universe, the more we learn about the intricate workings of the universe, from subatomic particles to, cataclysmic neutron explosions, everything in between and beyond, we see that there is a particular purpose and function and design and creativity behind all of it.
Okay, well, that's where we have to agree to differ.
But give me one example. I I give you the entire universe. Give me one example of a thing that fundamentally runs contrary to the philosophy or the postulation that this universe has specific functions and is being guided in a particular direction. Give me one example from nature or science, please. Because if it's random, if it's all quantum and it's all chaos and it's underpinned by entropy, then you should be able to give me 99% of the universe and say this does not point to design, but it points to design and it points to function. And you cannot have a thing with...
I don't think it does.
Give me one example. I'll give you the entire universe.
Well, which universe?
Our observed current universe as we know it. Just give me one. You should be able to give me 10 examples right off the top of your head.
Well, I'll give you a sort of a metaphor, an analogy. Okay, if you were having this conversation in my back garden with a worm, and the worm was saying, "This is my garden, and this is the only garden, and it's the only garden exists."
I'm not saying this is the only universe.
Most worms would agree that that's his garden. That's it. But the worm has no way of knowing that just over the fence is another garden and another garden, another garden, and they're all different. Yeah. And his garden is not how he thinks it really is, and it's not even a garden. So we kind of as people, a bit like the worm, and that's the limit of our knowledge. It's pretty...
No, I love the example you gave. I love the example you gave because a garden literally requires a gardener.
No, it doesn't. I mean,
it's a definition of a garden.
Gardener has no gardener. My neighbour's garden is chaos.
Your neighbour,
it's chaos. But it's nature working chaotically.
What about your garden? What about your garden? Do you keep it generally?
I generally keep it pretty well. Yeah.
So there's a difference between
I wouldn't elevate myself to the level of God.
No, I'm saying there's a difference between when there's an intelligent gardener, the shape of that garden, and though your neighbour's, which does not have a gardener that takes care of it. And what I'm saying is this garden, this universe, points to the fact that it has a gardener because of the incredible design that it demonstrates.
But I don't think it does. And I don't.
But you have to give me an example.
I don't think the fact that I spend time in my garden keeping it tidy means that, that I am in some way controlling my garden, because I know I'm not. I know that my garden is actually controlling itself.
It trims its own grass. It weeds itself. It gives itself its own. I mean, in the UK, it's
got to follow rules. My garden's got to follow rules.
Yeah, the universe literally follows rules.
No, it's only actually doing what it does naturally. And I do a bit of sort of maintenance, but I don't.
But that's not the point I made. The point is that you have a neighbor who does not tend to his garden, and it's basically chaotic. There is less orderliness in your garden. There is more orderliness because there's an intelligent person gardening.
See, we've got to.
Professor, do you hear what you're saying?
To close, because there's only orderliness according to your definition of orderliness. But my neighbor says to me, Graham, you'll never defeat this. You will never get it right. It will always win in the end.
What will always win?
Chaos, the plants and the things and the growth and the biology and whatever. The chemistry. It will always win in the end. Because it's just on its own chaotic, statistical path, and that's how it's always been and always will be.
So everything we see around us right now is all on it. This is all chaos. It should be chaos, right? It has no gardener.
I mean, to some people's
why would help me understand? Honestly, I'm asking you this. Help me understand. Why would a universe that is underpinned by entropy, which is an irreversibly increasing amount of chaos?
To me, that looks pretty chaotic to me. Those guys on the river.
You don't see any order here. You don't see any specific functions.
Well, I don't think that's
a brilliant network of.
The thing is that really, what it boils down to, I think, is that if you ask a human being to disprove God, or to prove God, a human being will try and do that in human terms.
Yeah,
but the human mind,
that's all we can do.
The human mind isn't capable of doing it. For a start, it doesn't have enough knowledge, and secondly,
I agree with you.
It doesn't have the comprehension, and it doesn't have the vocabulary, and so it can never do it. And in the end, all it will do is it will struggle to do it in its own feeble way, but that's as far as it will get.
No, I fully agree with you. That's why I say that the scientific understanding of our universe is an indispensable part of the equation.
Yeah.
That's great. No, I thank you so much for your time. I hope I didn't say anything that was, abrasive or
No,
disrespectful.
no,
I think it was just
quite
like
the contrary. I mean, I had time. I'm waiting for my son. My son is part of that chaos there, pushing tourists up and down the river in his punt. But I mean, it is fascinating. It is interesting. I still don't quite understand what the project is.
Yeah, the Existence Project is basically, there are a lot of, there are videos on social media and stuff saying like Muslim destroys atheist or atheist silences Christian, whatever. We want to show that actually these are really fascinating conversations and that we can actually build bridges of greater understanding, have loving conversations. It doesn't have to be ugly, you know what I mean?
No.
So that's our objective, and
Yeah,
we
well,
want to
very
have a
good.
different
You've
kind
done a good job of that the last few minutes or so, and it's really important stuff.
Thank you.
It's
I
really
really
important
appreciate it.
stuff.
Thank you so much.
I mean, initially I kind of thought, is this some sort of evangelistic, so I was a bit wary, but as I was stuck on this bridge for half an hour, I thought I would find out more, and I think it's really good what you're doing. I hope you have a lot of conversations with people.
Yeah, we've been all over the US, we're here in the UK, going to different campuses, and
I mean, you're quite lucky to have this sort of conversation. I love this sort of conversation, and you're lucky to be able to have it with lots of different people.
Oh, it's a dream. It's a dream.
Yeah,
I learn so much, like I always learn, like your example of a gardener, I'm going to be thinking about it day and night now. Thank you so much for your time.
No, not at
Thank
all.
you.
No, really
amazing.
Nice to meet you.
Does society need God?
That's a very good question.
I mean, we have moral society without God.
You think what is happening in the world is a moral thing? There's a moral situation in the civilized world right now. What Stalin did, 20 million people dead, some estimates higher, horrific. He pronouncedly said that what he did, he took out the idea of God, did not permit the idea of God, and he said that this is the result of true atheism.